Pandora's box is about to open wide.
Welcome to Pandora's box, everybody. We're just randomly going to play a little bit of Wanted, Dead or Alive by by Lynyrd Skynyrd. Not Lynyrd Skynyrd, by Bon Jovi. Lynyrd Skynyrd's slightly cheesier cousin. Just because, why not? I accidentally learnt this the other day. It's all the same. It's only the names that change every day. It seems we're wasting away. I love the place where the faces are so cold. Will I drive all night just to get back home? 'Cause I'm a cowboy on a steel horse I ride, and I'm wanted, dead or alive. Yeah, that was pretty rubbish because I didn't actually intend to play that or anything. But I just accidentally learnt that the other day and just thought it was quite fun.
Mm-hmm. Boom!
Quite a fun song to play, so I've just been battling that out.
Start the show.
Yeah, impromptu start. I say that wasn't planned or anything. So yeah, sorry, because that was pretty awful, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was beautiful, man.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks to Sam Peeps, long time listener to the pod. Sam Peeps.
Oh yeah.
He left a little comment the other day on our YouTube. Funnily enough, that was the first thing I'd heard of it, and then later on that day I heard more about it, about that sycamore tree at Hadrian's Wall.
Yeah, I heard about
that
this.
got felled.
I've heard about this.
Did you hear
Crazy.
about that? Yeah, I heard about that.
No.
So there's like a 300-year-old sycamore tree that's like super famous. It's like one of the most famous trees in England, or maybe even Britain, and
maybe even the world.
Maybe even the world. Maybe even the universe. And yeah, some like random 16-year-old, and apparently some guy in his 60s is also now been apprehended. But yeah, just for some reason, just chopped down the tree last week.
It was like a real standalone tree, like a tree literally by itself, like right by Hadrian's Wall. Wasn't it?
I thought you meant like it had been done properly, like by tree fellas.
No,
and
it was like an
for
illegal
some
act.
weird reason. What?
I'm pretty sure the tree was like protected, maybe, or either way, it was like
Mate.
considered like a landmark. Whether it was like official.
I hope they go to jail.
Yeah, well, it said it's a completely like random act, but it's a lot of people are like really devastated by it because, as I said, it's been used on like album covers. There's a band called Winterfellith who I used to play on my folk show Forest Glebe quite a lot. And they're literally like their front cover is like this like dark winter's day and like the trees in the background, and then there's like Hadrian's Wall and you can just sort of see the sun like setting in the background, and it's a pretty epic freaking album cover. The tree's also like also featured in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves with Kevin Costner.
Oh, I love that movie.
Yeah, so that
I actually love that movie.
That tree is like starred alongside Kevin Costner.
Is that the one where like he fights like a few guards around it? And
I think so.
Mate, that scene is
with
amazing.
with
and
Morgan Freeman.
Yeah.
Imagine if that was just
I
his name.
actually used to love that movie when I was younger.
Man, it's an epic movie.
I know.
It's a classic
so
90s movie, isn't it?
And now the tree is forever gone.
Oh.
Well, they think that it might regrow. But let's face it, it's going to take like frickin'
another 300 years.
Yeah, I was going to say, it like took 300 years to get it as big as it was. So,
did anyone know the reason behind why he did it?
I still, as far as I know, I haven't looked into it massively, but I don't think there's like a clear-cut motive, or at least not one that's been released to the public. I doubt there is, to be honest, man. I expect it's more just a random act of wanton destruction.
Random act of violence.
Yeah, as I said, the only thing I know is that a 16-year-old was arrested, and apparently now a man in his 60s has now also been arrested. So I don't know if he I don't know like why he's been arrested. Whether it turns out that he actually like chopped down the tree with a 16-year-old, or if he like supplied the 16-year-old with the tools to do it, or what. I'm not sure. But yeah, I know that 2 guys have been arrested.
Weird.
Crazy.
Yeah, man, in Northumberland, in the home of Uhtred, son of Uhtred. Yeah, Hadrian's Wall. So sad times, man.
Sad day.
That is a sad day, isn't it?
Don't like it one bit.
I say a lot of people are like really, really up in arms about it, like naturally. Yeah. So rest in peace, sycamore tree.
You will be missed.
R.I.P.
Yeah, I think Hadrian's Wall was so cool as well. That's like a place that I want to like spend some good time on. I was thinking like a while ago, I'd really like for like charity or something to just like do like the whole length of like Hadrian's Wall.
What is Hadrian's Wall? Because he's a Roman emperor, right? But
yeah.
Was it basically just the wall of Scotland? Is that what it is?
No, it's not. It's not like the divide of Scotland because there's like because there's some bits over the wall that are in Northumberland and in Cumbria.
Right.
But it was like, so the Emperor Hadrian made that, like, built that wall, and I think it was, I'm just trying to remember. It's like, it's big, but it's from coast to coast. It's obviously, it's from all the way from the west coast to the east coast. And then I think something like every mile originally, obviously a lot of them aren't there anymore, but every single mile, I think they were literally called like mile forts or something like that. And every mile on the wall, there would be like a castle. Right. So there'd be like a small castle, where I guess like all the troops and stuff would like sleep and garrison and stuff like that. And then, you'd have the wall. And apparently like back in the day, like the wall looked like a lot more impressive obviously than it does now. Like a lot of it's like fallen into like ruin and rubble and stuff like that. But they built that. But then after Hadrian's Wall was built, they actually built another wall further north. I can't remember what that one's called off the top of my head. I want to say it begins with the letter A. But they built another one, a lesser known one, much further north, because the Romans, they did conquer like certain parts of Scotland and stuff in the end, the Roman Empire. And one thing I thought was quite interesting as well was, and I was thinking how mental this must have been for the soldiers. Obviously, because the Roman army had like soldiers from like all over the world in it. There were like people there would have been Roman soldiers from like Belgium, and I think even places like Syria and stuff that would have been stationed at the wall. But I was thinking, like, imagine if you were born in somewhere like that, and then suddenly you were just like sent really far north, up into sort of like Northumberland and Cumbria and stuff. Especially back in those days, imagine how wild it would have looked. And I know that the Romans had a lot of like superstitious feelings about Britain at the time. I remember one of the reasons why they didn't try and conquer Britain earlier was because in sort of like Roman mythology, they thought that the English Channel was like guarded by like spirits, like giant mythical beasts that would just like destroy any ships that would like. And then cool. and they'd always heard tales that it wasn't almost like humans that lived on the Isle of Britannia. It was like beasts and like strange like supernatural beings. Spectres. Yeah. And obviously, the more they spent time there, and almost were like, oh, actually, they're just big people. Pretty crazy people though, because they were still
so cool.
I said it would have all been druidic people at the time, so they'd have been like, a bunch of freaking mushroom taking like nut bars, and apparently like a lot of them would like go into battle completely naked and like covered in like blue paint, and they would make the paint from like a certain type of flower, I can't remember which, and then they would also use another type of flour to essentially make like a hair gel. And even though they had long hair, they would almost like spike it up in like a crazy mohawk. So they'd just be like, they'd look like almost like giant warrior Smurfs, but with giant mohawks. And just like full on battle lust and stuff like that. But
I think part of the thing I love about that period of history, I love that in Rome, you would have almost had what could be compared to a similar life to modern day, where you could go down to a modern bath. It would have been really nice. But at the same time, they still had the mystery of what's on that island. Is it a bunch of beasts? Like, obviously now the world's a lot smaller. We know what everything is. We know where everywhere, what the culture is like in all these different places. But the idea of back in the day, you could have still had this life of comfort, but had this weird, like, mystical world out there that you may never get to see.
Yeah, like the gods they all believed in as well, and they still so were immersed in all of that mythical godlike, I guess, like craziness.
We even today though we still have it a little bit. I think that's why places like the Amazon are so fascinating, because you like know how big it is, and you know how much of it is almost like uncharted, so to speak. Do you know what I mean? Like there's no civilized places,
and like the prehistory that that is just so. That's what's so interesting for me. Like we know about the cultures now up to a certain extent and to a point. But there's so much missing as well, like, and the Amazon is what's really impressive with that. Like, we still don't know what is under the Amazon and the cities and all of the secrets that it beholds. Did
you see recently they discovered a tablet? I think this is I saw it this morning, so I'm assuming it is a recent discovery. That Pythagoras theorem. Apparently that was discovered, or there was a tablet made which had the basic premise of Pythagoras theorem
before Pythagoras,
1,000 years before Pythagoras.
Wow,
that's crazy.
That's pretty crazy.
So it's actually not Pythagoras.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's like funny, isn't it? That's like I bet that whoever actually did invent that is like really annoyed in his grave about that.
It's like that. I wonder if there's more as well, like kind of like lost technology that is even beyond that we have now. Like,
sure.
do you remember like when we were looking at last week about the metal, the steel, and that there was this way of making swords that's just completely lost now. Like they still don't know now how they made these.
Yeah,
like,
what was that
super
called? Yeah, it was
sharp
like a special type
swords.
of steel, wasn't it? It's just like lost to time. Well, also talking of the Romans, there's also Roman concrete, which is the same. It's like Romans invented concrete, but the way they made it, we don't know how they made it. It's sort of like lost to time. There's no scriptures that actually go into detail about how it was made. But we know that Roman concrete was like way better than modern concrete. And I know that.
Whoa, that's mad.
I know that Aspen Wake did an R&D claim for like a building company a few years ago, but it was like he was like an inventor as well as a builder, and he invented a type of he had like devoted his life alongside being a general builder to like trying to reinvent Roman concrete. And obviously, I don't think you can't obviously know if you've done it for sure, because obviously we don't have the recipe, so it's almost impossible to tell. But almost like comparing the feats of the Roman concrete compared to like what he was doing with his, he was trying to like recreate it, and I think he ended up getting like a really big claim for it. But I don't know like what's happened with that, because you think of after a while something like that would become standardized, but apparently it was like amazing. So this is how good it was. Like, so obviously when you get concrete, you usually sort of depending on what you're doing, you'll either mix like sand and cement or like ballast and cement, won't you? And then you'll sort of like to whatever ratio, and you basically like put water in and you'll mix it, won't you? And then obviously you put it wherever you want to put it, and then it will dry. And then once it's dry, it's like rock solid, literally. But the interesting thing, obviously, about Roman concrete is, and I think it's like a mystery as far as I know, it's like a complete mystery. Roman concrete could set even underwater, which is like mad, isn't it? Like if you think about that, that's like it almost like spins me out.
It's mad that people can't back engineer it. Just study what the actual
particles,
materials are.
Yeah, you'd think almost like if you studied it under like a microscope,
yeah,
like a scientist would be like, well, this is made of that. Yeah, I know. This is absolutely amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I mean, there's other like amazing like feats that are lost to time like that, like like Greek fire and stuff like that. Apparently, there were like Greek ships and stuff that literally had like flamethrowers almost on board.
Whoa.
And they could. It's what obviously Game of Thrones takes a lot of
wildfire.
Takes a lot of stuff based on history. One of which obviously being the Wall. Obviously, he clearly based that on Hadrian's Wall, like George R.R. Martin,
or the Great Wall of China.
Nah, it's definitely Hadrian's Wall. Yeah. And also even the way there's like Castle Black, and then there's like there's like lots of other forts along the wall.
I told you I started watching Game of Thrones literally last night.
Yeah, you told me yesterday that you were going to start watching it. Yeah. Did you like the first episode? Oh, did you like it?
Very good.
It is good.
Very good. Yeah, I always knew I'd like it. I just needed to properly sit it. It's a daunting task, isn't it? Like going into something like 8 seasons.
The man that passes the sentence must.
I'd never actually finished it. I got through like halfway through the last season. The last time I watched all of them, but then this time did the whole thing.
Nice.
It was really good.
Yeah.
It was really good.
Yeah, it's definitely worth watching. Obviously, it's left a bit of a bitter taste in a lot of people's mouths, because even like most of the actors, if not all of them, are like really, really annoyed about how it finished. But like even if they weren't at the time, they've like come out since and said that they were really angry. I know that Charles Dance has like openly said that it's like basically the last season's rubbish, and so is like Emilia Clarke, who obviously played like literally one of the very main characters, like Daenerys Targaryen and stuff like that.
Isn't the final book not written? Is that why?
Yeah, he hasn't written it.
Yeah.
He
So
hasn't.
they
I wonder if
went
they'll
ahead of the
remake
author.
it when like.
Yeah.
It'd be good if they did, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But a lot of people are like starting to question if he'll ever even bring out the book, because
Wasn't he actively involved with the actual writing of the last season?
I think he was up until the point where they run out of source material.
Right, okay. So he wasn't even involved in that last bit.
I don't think so.
That
but
shows as well why it went.
Yeah. I know that he doesn't like it though as well. George R.R. Martin's like super critical of. I think it was like something like, I don't know if it was 100% like this, but I think I read something where he was like asked in an interview like what he thought of like the last couple of seasons of Game of Thrones, and he didn't say he didn't like it, but he said something. He said something like, "I much prefer the Last Kingdom." Or something like that, and I thought, oh, cool, he likes the Last Kingdom, because I freaking love the Last Kingdom. But I remember him saying that he'd like gotten well into the Last Kingdom and like Bernard Cornwell's books and stuff like that, because they are epic. But yeah, a lot of people are almost like a bit critical of George R.R. Martin nowadays, and saying that he is physically incapable of finishing the story.
Didn't they say he almost backed himself into a corner?
Yeah. because he's almost like one of the things obviously that makes Game of Thrones so interesting is how many subplots are going on. But it's almost like biting off more than you can chew. A lot of people are saying like, and like a lot of like expert writers and stuff are saying like, it's almost impossible to round up every single narrative now. Like it's almost impossible. Like even if you think of something like a masterpiece like Lord of the Rings or something like that, like there's a hell of a lot going on in it, but it's very like neat and tidy. Whereas George R.R. Martin's more like a freaking, he chucked a grenade into his mind with ideas and then just went, do you know what I mean? But then it's like, how do you tidy that up? Whereas Tolkien, he knew how the story was going to end, like before he started writing it. Do you know what I mean?
That's amazing.
Like before he even started writing it, he'd written the entire language of Elvish. He'd written the entire like Orcish language. He spent like probably a decade, maybe even more, just preparing for the book, writing the languages, Dwarvish, all of the languages.
It's
there's
really
even
good to
different
know the
types of
plot.
Elvish. There's even different languages of Elvish.
I wonder how much, because I remember reading something about Stephen King, and he was saying that when he writes, he said sometimes the characters develop themselves as he's writing. Like he's got that thing of just like sitting down and that almost like going this at this time and just doing it and like trusting that it will come and that. And I remember him talking about something like sometimes the characters write themselves like as he's kind of doing it. But then like there's obviously that whole thing of like knowing exactly what the story, and from his thing it was a bit like the story develops itself, if you know what I mean, as in like some of like the way he was like saying that sometimes he'll be writing about a certain character or about a thing and he doesn't know why the importance is of their interaction, but then it will develop itself and how the story comes like that. But then that's obviously like a bit too open sometimes, I can imagine, because it's like, where is it going to go? Like having that know what the kind of plot is before, I can imagine that is like an amazing like way of knowing that you're going to finish the book and stuff.
It seems like Stephen King's like very like got a lot of self-control though. Like I could imagine, even though he's letting the character sort of write itself in his mind, I bet he doesn't let himself get carried away. Whereas I think what you see with George R.R. Martin is he got very carried away. He's like, oh yeah, and then what if this happened? And then what if this happened? Yeah. And then what if this happened? But then it almost comes full circle, and you're like, how the hell am I supposed to wrap all of this up in one book?
And I don't think there is, like you were saying, I don't think there is a satisfying way to do it. Whatever way you do it, it's going to feel forced when you have that many things going on, because it's going to be like, oh, and this story finished at the same time, and so did this, and so did this. You almost need to like,
it's almost like it can all happen
you almost
at the
need to
same
like
time.
spread it out further so that all these things can wrap
Like
themselves
finish
up.
one, and then carry on
exactly.
some more books in that direction with that characters until they finish on their own.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the reasons why like horror literature is one of the hardest like genres to write, because it's all about building up, suspense, unless obviously we were talking about it last week, like horror and stuff, unless it's like relying on body horror and stuff, which is obviously more of like a movie thing rather than a literature thing. But if you're trying to build up all this suspense and all this ambience of like, what is this thing that's after me or whatever like that, like
it almost can't end. The suspense is the good part.
Yeah, like if you at the end say, well, it was this and this and this and this, you're almost like, and then the story ends. You're like, oh,
yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas like, so it's like it takes a lot.
Ending it with a mystery is always.
It's very intellectual. I'll tell you what, a horror story that I read recently that was absolutely amazing is called The Hauler, Horrla. So not like a hauler, like a job, but yeah, that was absolutely insane piece of literature. I can't remember who it was written by. I think it was a French author.
So would that have been like translated into English?
I think so. Let me try and have a look up at who wrote The Hauler. But I tell you what, that was like, if you want almost like a master sort of study in sort of like horror literature. If you want a master study in horror literature, I think that's like a good book to read, because it's just so eloquently written, and almost like ends really well. Do you know what I mean? There's never like a point where you're feeling like disappointed, and then it ends and you sort of go like, Jesus Christ. Do you know what I mean? But it manages to finish off the story in a way that you're just like, whoa. Not at all like, oh, that was a bit of a rubbish ending. Like I've read lots of horror stories and stuff where I've thought it's really good, and then it gets to the end and I'm like, that was a bit weird. Yeah. That was almost like a bit disappointing. The Hauler. There we go. Yeah, short story by Guy de Maupassant. Hauler is an 1887 short horror story written in the style of a journal by the French writer Guy de Maupassant.
I like that, in the style of a journal. That's cool.
Yeah, it's really good. So it's like
cool.
So it would be like July 5th, and then he'll like say,
See, that's cool. That's a cool way to do it, because it brings it a little bit more in the real world, doesn't it?
Yeah. It says the story has been cited as an inspiration for Lovecraft's The Call of Cthulhu, which also features an extraterrestrial being who influences minds and who is destined to conquer humanity.
I didn't know that was what Cthulhu was, The Call of Cthulhu, because is that what's inspired by the Metallica song? Wow.
Yeah, so Cliff Burton and James Hetfield were into Lovecraft, so they writ The Call of Cthulhu, and the story is literally called The Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah.
So they writ a song inspired on the book.
That's
so they almost
cool.
wanted to write like a soundtrack for
I always
Cthulhu.
wondered like what that was. That's
Lovecraft's so good.
Yeah.
There's like so many interesting interpretations of his work as well.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because it goes on about what the word hauler is there, because I was wondering that myself, and it says the word hauler itself is not French and is a neologism. Charlotte Mendel, who has translated the hauler for publisher Melville House, suggests in an afterword that the word hauler is a portmanteau of the French words horse, outside, and la, there. And that le hauler sounds like the outsider, the outer, the one, out there. And can be transliterally interpreted as what's out there. That's interesting, isn't it?
That's cool. That's a cool name.
It's a great story, though. I recommend that you guys read it. It's
I'll
absolutely
read that.
fantastic.
Yeah. I saw a movie trailer for a new movie coming out that I thought looked really interesting recently, and it was sort of based off the idea. You can tell exactly where they'd gotten the idea from. But do you remember a while back, I think it's a Nick Cage movie, the new Nick Cage movie coming out.
Oh, right. I didn't know there was a new Nick Cage movie coming out.
And I'm not even too sure what it's called, but it's clearly based off the idea. Do you remember a while back when I was saying about the man everyone sees in their dreams?
Yep.
And it was this man
Or
that...
like the detective guy.
Oh,
the like weird looking
He almost looks like a detective, like a long beige coat.
But look, see if you can grab up his face on the website.
You're on about a different one.
The weird.
You're on about the guy that's almost like bold or something.
Yes, and like no one's actually seen him in real life, but people all see him in his dreams. So I believe in this Nick Cage movie, he is essentially the guy who everyone's seeing in his dreams, and he's just having a go about his normal life. And everyone keeps having like horrible nightmares about this guy chasing him.
So Nicolas Cage is playing the guy, did you say?
Yeah, exactly. I think this is clearly what it's based on.
That almost looks like a character from Thunderbirds.
Oh mate, that monobrow.
When you see it, like
those massive eyebrows. Oh god, I better not laugh because he's gonna come after me in my dreams.
Yeah, tonight, Drew. Tonight.
He'll be there. So you laughed at me on the podcast.
Man, everyone sees in their dreams looks like Polish famous poet. An LGBT activist, Jazz Capella.
Jazz Capella.
That is hilarious.
Oh man, why does he look so like
a Thunderbird?
Yeah, or just like, that's clearly a very similar person. If these are from different sources,
I think this is person's, but I think Andrew Lloyd Webber is the man everyone sees in their dreams. Andrew Lloyd Webber is obviously that famous like musical writer, isn't he? He wrote like the Phantom of the Opera and stuff. I think the Phantom of the Opera is so good.
That's Boris seeing him in his own dreams.
Oh my god, look at this one.
Oh.
Yeah, sorry for everyone that's just listening on the radio. We're just looking at some funny pictures now, basically. But yeah, there's
someone's got him tattooed. Did you see that? Go down a little bit.
So they must see it.
Like down a little bit more. Look at that tattoo, everyone.
Yeah, if you Google it, everyone, for people that listen on the radio, just Google the man that everyone sees in their dreams, and you'll find this guy.
The movie is called Dream Scenario. It's an A24 film, which does not surprise me. That sounds like an A24 film.
What's an A24 film?
So some examples would be like Hereditary, Midsummer.
Right.
It's just like a film company that like produces these weird movies. I went and watched an A24 film recently with Joaquin Phoenix called Beau is Afraid, and I've never left the cinema feeling more uncomfortable.
That's how Midsummer left me feeling.
What's Midsummer?
It's that when it's like
with Florence Pugh.
A girl goes to like Sweden, like rural Sweden. On like a little like college break or something like that, and then basically it's like there's all these pagan Swedish people, and it just gets more and more demented slowly, and then the ending is just super demented.
Whoa.
And then it just like ends on like such a weird demented note. Like I don't want to sort of give any spoilers away because I haven't watched it, but yeah, it's definitely.
It's Ari Aster. Ari Aster is like the producer / director that makes them all. And he made Hereditary, he made Midsummer, he made Beau is Afraid, and now he's clearly the one who's made this Dream Scenario.
I wonder who made the movie Annihilation, because I reckon that's the movie that left me feeling most weird.
Really?
Have you guys seen that, Annihilation?
No.
That's a good movie, but it's a freaking weird movie. Like it's just quite disturbing. Do you know what I mean? I want to see who made that Annihilation. For people out there that have seen it, you'll know what I mean. It's just like
Alex Garland.
Oh right. All right.
I think. I know it's the one.
I know it's based on a book. Story follows a group of explorers who enter the Shimmer, a mysterious quarantined zone of mutilating plants and animals caused by an alien presence. Yeah, it's a very disturbing film. There's a couple of scenes in it which just sort of make your brain sort of want to go into shutdown. That's like the only thing I can sort of...
Really?
Yeah. It's just,
oh my God.
Mate, and then like when it finished, it was like so heavy. I was just like, man, I need to like watch a comedy or something.
Yeah,
like,
it's horrible,
even if it's just for like 20 minutes, I need to watch a comedy, because if I just almost like
Take
end
myself out of that
the
place.
day like this, then it's just like a weird way to end my
Yeah.
day. Do you know what I mean?
That's how I felt about this Boas Afraid. I couldn't even describe. It was like a 3.5 hour movie.
Yeah.
So let alone that's like you're already in for a bit of a journey.
Yeah.
And it was just me and my friend in the cinema, and this thing was just like, I don't even really know. It just felt horrible. Like, it was funny at points. It was, very well acted at points. There were interesting things going on.
Yeah.
But at the end of it, you just felt like you'd been through a war. And I got home and I was like, oh, Jesus. I got to put on something a bit nicer now to calm this one down.
Yeah, man, for sure. I say, I don't want to give any spoilers away, but just for people that have seen Annihilation that are listening, I'll just say that mutant bear scene. Honestly, mutant bear scene is freaking weird. It's like freaking trippy. Like, just spins, just makes your mind sort of just feel so uneasy. Horrible.
Oh, I can't think of the name. I saw a crazy one about a year ago or a couple of years ago called Mockingbird or Nightingale or something like that, and it was savage. It was like one of these movies that you think is going to be just like an old. No, I think it was called Nightingale though, and it was about the English like kind of colonization of Australia. And when prisoners
I remember you telling me about that.
Yeah, like when prisoners would go over and people that were like
Aborigines.
Yeah, but there was this Irish girl that went over there as like a prisoner, if you know what I mean, or and it was just her story basically, and with like Aborigines.
Oh yeah,
as well.
the Nightingale.
Oh man, but it's one of those movies that you think, oh, this is going to be pretty cool, but then it just gets like savage, you know, like brutally savage, and people like walked out of the cinemas and stuff. Apparently, like
really?
when
Directed and written by Jennifer Kent. It says The Nightingale is a 2018 Australian historical psychological thriller film. Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah, it is mad though. Like some scenes
but
more about just like human brutality and stuff.
Yeah, it's
and
not like horror.
No, and then like when you see it, but the way they film it and that, and like how real
disturbing.
some of the bits are.
I think it's like even more horrifying to know that is something that happened as well.
Yeah.
Like, there's truth behind it, which makes it even more a bit like, ugh.
Yeah, but a degree of truth. I think obviously we should be careful about saying it was like exactly like that, because we don't really know.
Well, I've not even seen the film, so yeah.
Yeah, I know, of course. And there's also a trend, definitely a lot nowadays, to make out that things were worse than they were in the past. Like,
I know that they did when they directed that movie. They got the Aboriginal elders of Australia to be a part of the production to try and get you know what I mean, for like the historical accuracy in that as well. So I remember because I was reading about it after, it's like what even was that? You know, so I kind of
the Aboriginal people were definitely treated awfully. I'm obviously not trying to say that they weren't, but I say it's interesting. Do you remember when I read out that like transcript, and it was like a translation from, I think it was like an old Maori one, wasn't it? And it was like an ancient Maori one. It was like the first interaction, like written interaction of like a Maori. It was like it was like a Maori guy, but it was like his interactions with like the British, and he was going on about how like one of the people in his tribe like stole something from like the British ship. And then he was like rowing away, and then he said something like one of their thunder sticks boomed, and then he was just really confused because then the thief in his tribe just like was just dead on the boat, and then he was just like, they were like, what? And stuff. And it's like, it's so interesting
and then the
reading
elder was
it.
like, no, it was his fault. So
Yeah,
he didn't,
yeah.
retaliate or anything.
Yeah, because apparently all the people like
that was really interesting.
because apparently it seemed like it was like a pretty amicable, like, you know, I think what like we have to remember sometimes with historical accounts like that is a lot of because the British were such like a seafaring nation and were so like wanting to explore the world. A lot of like you see with a lot of like unencountered, I don't know what word for them, you know, like tribes in the Amazon and stuff that don't really have anything to do with the civilized world. That's what I'm getting at anyway. Like they tend to be extremely aggressive to outsiders. So I think obviously what you often had with like say like British and Dutch and French explorers back in the day, they would go to like an island, and then if they obviously just got attacked, then obviously what they would do then is like fire back and shoot back. And what they probably thought was like containing the situation would have obviously been to like then probably like in some way like contain. You know what I mean? Throw chains on these people and stuff, which is obviously savage, but you can see why like a British person like 400 years ago would have done something like that. Do you know what I mean? Because if your job
up and you get attacked,
if your job, say you just join the British Navy, the Royal Navy, and then you just come to this crazy island, and there are these people which are probably quite terrifying to you, just like running out of the bushes, like and just like freaking trying to kill you. You're going to be like, oh man, I can't like sleep tonight unless we contain the situation. We obviously have the superior force, so if these people cannot be reasoned with and be like, look, we have trade goods with you and that, can we just like stay here until we have to leave without you trying to kill us? And if they're just like no, then you're probably like, okay, in the day they would just been like, well, these are savages then. These are savages that cannot be reasoned with. So like we must contain the situation in some way until like we leave or whatever, you know? It's like one of those things. So as I say, I'm not saying that obviously to like excuse anything, but as I said, I think sometimes it's almost like in movies, modern days, and a lot of sort of like just in general, it's almost like seen that like there were these like evil Europeans that like went out to just be as evil as possible to everyone in the world, and that all of these like tribes were just like these lovely innocent people that were just like, please don't hurt me, and you're like, no, I'm gonna kill you. Do you know what I mean? Whereas like that's not what it was like.
I think like everything as well, you get people that are real sound, and you get absolute assholes.
That's right.
In that story of that film, it was like this one general that was like that was a complete
the antagonist.
Donkey.
Yeah, the
you know what I mean?
antagonist.
Yeah, just in the story, and it's like you can imagine that. You can imagine some people being super power hungry and like real just like not, you know, or you can imagine other people being like completely wanting the best for like, you know what I mean? Like, be, you know, there's always people that that kind of take advantage of the power they have, and then there's always people that are like want the best for everyone. So I think it would just get like,
it's like anything
so much of that as well.
Anything in life. Do you know what I mean? Everyone remembers back to school, and like obviously teachers have a degree of power. Well, they have a lot of power over you. And
that's a perfect example.
Some teachers are just power, like they've almost like the power's gone to their head, and as a result they are almost like horrible to pupils, or at least, you know, if they just get it in their head for some reason that they don't like one specific pupil or a couple different specific pupils, they will just be like tyrannical to them. And then you can think back to other teachers, and you just know, you think back on them and you know what, they were really sound.
They were
like just a decent person, you know, and you could tell that they just genuinely wanted what was best for all the pupils. And even though some pupils themselves, you know, are going to be absolute freaking just like handfuls and like nightmare pupils, and others are just going to be like straight A freaking students. Do you know what I mean? But like either way, do you know what I mean? Obviously, as an adult, it's your job to just try and do what's best in your situation, do what's best for all of the pupils, and rather than almost like letting that power go to your head and just being like a tyrant and just putting any kid that you don't like into detention or suspension or whatever, you know? So and it's the same with police, isn't it? You know, I think, you know, a lot of people have had encounters with police, and then it's almost like for some reason from the get-go they are just unreasonable or just like unpleasant to you.
It's like, this is what this power structure is.
They're not talking to you like a normal human being. And then you've got other police officers that will just talk to you like what they are, which is a human being that's doing a job, but they also happen to be a police officer.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So, you know, unless obviously you're doing anything which is like suspicious, you know, like unless you're like under suspicion for a crime, why would a police officer talk to you any differently than they would do when they're off duty? Do you know what I mean? You're just like, hey, right, you're having a good day? Yeah, cool. Cheers. Yeah, have a nice day. You know, it's like, it doesn't have to be anything more than that, other than just like, what are you doing here? You know, or like whatever you like. So I think, as you said, Drew, just some people are like that. Some people are basically nice, and other people aren't so nice, unfortunately, and you're going to get that all over the place, you know.
Have you seen on Netflix the samurai documentary?
No.
Man, I would really recommend it. It's a 6-part, like, and because I know a little bit about like Japan, or you know, you see what you see in culture and stuff like that, but this like outlines the in the like around the 1300s, like basically the rise, the unification of Japan, and like kind of you know, going from complete all different tribes and families to like becoming like this one power basically, or pretty much one power, and just like the story of that, and how this one guy from like a smaller family, smaller tribe, like basically nearly conquers the whole of Japan, like where you've got these other tribes that are like humongous compared to him and stuff, and the brutality of like that
samurai culture.
Oh man, and
they were just warrior culture.
Samurais are so cool.
13 or 15, it might have been the 1500s.
Yeah, I think samurais came around a bit later.
1500s it was, so it's like around that time. But like, man, and just like taking over complete. There was this mountainous region, and he said to conquer them, he had to basically just like decimate them. And it was like 20. He chopped off the heads of like 20,000 people, and just and I was like, man, I've heard so savage.
I've heard them like different historians like say about the samurai and stuff. They were like they were such like a warrior culture that if basically in times like you'd think right, like in times where there is no external threat, that everyone would just be really happy, and it would be like a time of peace. Whereas basically, like when say like there was another Asian force or whatever that was trying to invade them, like famously the Mongols tried to like savagely invade Japan back when they were basically just invading everywhere. But unless they were like saying getting attacked by the Mongols or anything like that, they would basically be so restless because they weren't getting attacked by an external threat that they would just instantly go to war with each other.
Yeah.
That's just crazy, isn't it? Like, almost like to imagine, like, you're so ingrained in that warrior mentality and that need for, like, bloodlust and battle that it's like, we're not getting attacked by anyone, right, let's just go and attack them. Let's just go and attack our mates down the road. Or, like, we're not our mates. You know what I mean?
Like this play for power with the families and that. It was like...
Shoguns.
Yeah, and just, like, how... Yeah, this, like, domination this one, like, family or one guy had, like, for the whole of Japan. And it just... outlines in each episode like what happened next, and it's a really good story. Like,
well, it's interesting. They pretty much kept the samurai mentality right up until World War II, but they saw it as they changed their almost like the whole of Japan changed their philosophy after World War II because they realized almost like that's why they basically like the atom bomb was dropped on them and stuff because they basically had, or especially the second one, the one at Nagasaki, because they basically just had this like never surrender, never say die attitude. And their philosophy was like, you will have to kill every single one of us because we will never surrender. Like it was just considered such a dishonorable thing to do in samurai culture to surrender. So obviously they just never surrendered. And that's why obviously the word kamikaze, like they would literally have kamikaze pilots. And it seems like mental to an American person or a British person or a French person or a Polish person to imagine this. But when the Japanese Air Force pilots would run out of bullets in the skies during World War II, they would just fly their planes into whatever they were attacking, and obviously in the process completely kill themselves. They would be like, okay, we're out of ammunition now, let's just turn the plane into a bomb. But then you're killing yourself, and they were just willingly, and that was like just like a normal part of their aerial warfare, which is mad, isn't it? Whereas like obviously it's very normal. Obviously, as I say, like a British Royal Air Force pilot, you'd run out of ammunition or you'd get damaged, you would obviously just go back to base. You wouldn't just like, right, I'm just going to kill myself now and just blow up my plane and turn myself into a bomb. But because they had that mindset, they would never surrender. And even after the atom bomb was dropped at Hiroshima, obviously basically flattened the whole city. And then the Americans said like, right, yeah, like surrender now. And the Japanese government basically like, no. So the Americans were like, okay, well, we're going to drop another atom bomb on you then. And they were just like, go ahead. And then they'd obviously dropped the one on Nagasaki. And then finally it was almost like a light bulb went off in like the Japanese government's head. And they were like, we've gotten to a point in history now in civilization where like if we do not change our samurai philosophy,
we're going to be wiped out.
Then everybody in Japan is going to die. So then they almost like had to overnight change their philosophy, and then it was like, because the second bomb was completely unnecessary. The second the atom bomb at Nagasaki was completely unnecessary. You know, and a lot of people will say the first one, Hiroshima, was unnecessary. And don't get me wrong, like, I hate nuclear bombs like more than anybody. Like I wish they'd never been invented, but I think you have to bear in mind, like from the Americans' point of view, like all the major forces in the world at the time were trying to develop the atom bomb, and basically whoever did it first would have then used it against their enemies. And it just so happened that, let's face it, luckily for us, it was one of our allies that did that. And also, I've heard like a lot of historical accounts, because it's very easy to like point the finger and try and act like a virtue signaling person and be like, that was really wrong of Americans to do that. But I've heard like every historian and like expert in World War II pretty much says like, if the war had dragged on, like way more people would have died in another say like year or two's worth of just normal warfare. Because obviously they already had like mad bombs and there was like crazy battles going on all over the world at that point. Way more people would have died than died at Hiroshima. It's just what's obviously awful about Hiroshima is that obviously like a lot of say like, you know, children would have died and stuff like that, which is obviously really, it's hard obviously as an adult or anybody to obviously listen to that and hear that and obviously that's like sit with you. But you also have to remind yourself again, like if the Germans came up with an atom bomb or if the Japanese did, you got to bear in mind like they 100% would have dropped. They wouldn't have given two Fs if the Germans did it, they would have not given two stuffs about dropping it on London and killing a bunch of British babies. If the Japs did it, they wouldn't have given two Fs about dropping it on Hawaii and killing all the Hawaiian babies or anything like that. Do you know what I mean? So it's a war is horrible at the end of the day, and it's very easy to blame the victors for stuff, which I think is a weird thing in modern society. In our modern society, it's almost like historically through history, victors were usually put on a pedestal, maybe sometimes too much. There's a weird
look
thing
at
with
Napoleon.
but there's a weird thing that's going on with our society now, where I feel like victors are almost like considered the bad people, and it's almost like regardless of who the loser is, there's almost like an
stigma.
There's a lot of sympathy for them. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that you shouldn't have sympathy for people, but do you know what I mean? It's almost like gotten to like an extreme point nowadays, where it's almost like if you are just like the winner or the victor, then it's almost like
you're no longer the winner.
You're somehow like an a-hole. Do you know what I mean? It's like, well, no, you just won.
Why did
I'd rather win than not win, obviously.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like
in World War II, so they obviously had the technology for the atom bomb. Why was it not used against Germany?
Germany had already been defeated by that point.
Yeah, it was unnecessary.
Okay.
Yeah, because
or like before that, when it was like in the middle of the war.
Well, obviously they basically invented it, came up with it, and then
a couple of weeks later,
obviously because there was the war in Japan and that was going on between the Americans and the Japanese in like the Pacific Ocean. Was very, very far away, obviously, from Germany. If you think about the Pacific Ocean, that's west of California, west of Hawaii. So they're basically in like the Asian hemisphere. And everything that was going on in Europe was obviously in Europe. So it was like not just the other side of America, it was then the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. You're talking about like almost at the opposite sides of the planet. Two completely different theatres. Same war, but completely different theatres.
And am I right in saying a lot of America's fight was against the Japanese due to Pearl Harbor, which was what brought them into the war in the first place? And then obviously, I was going to say like obviously the atomic bomb was mainly made in America with Oppenheimer. And
that's what obviously that movie was about recently.
And the whole organization that they had built over there for him to develop this bomb because it was being built in Germany.
Yes.
I think I would say maybe by the point it was developed that Germany had already surrendered. And by that point, because the Japanese
I can't remember exactly, but they might have done, The
Japanese fought for a while longer than Germany.
Yes, they did, And this is what I'm saying. It's partly due to their samurai mindset. You know, they were almost just like, they almost had no chance of winning by that point. It was almost just like, I mean, some people would just say it was outright foolish, but to them it was like an honour thing.
Why did the Japanese side with the Germans then as well?
I mean, to be honest, man,
because that seems pretty random.
You're getting into like a lot. You're getting into like a lot of deep politics. And to be honest with you, man, off the top of my head, I don't actually 100% know. It's actually very
seems really weird.
question.
Like what you're saying about like how far they are away and all of that stuff. It's like
100%, man.
Is it 100%. Just? I
think a lot. I mean, it's a very interesting point. I mean, to be honest, in a minute, I'll Google like trying to see
stuff to do like with Russia, perhaps.
I don't think it was
because Russia
would
have been closer. Obviously.
I don't think it was to do with Russia. It might have been. Say there was obviously a hell of a lot of politics in the war. I mean, obviously the only reason the British got involved was because we basically had a pact with Poland that said if you get invaded by anybody, that we will go to war against the people that invaded you.
And Hitler didn't want.
No, he wanted the British people to be on his side because he saw us as like fellow Aryans. He saw us as like, you know, anybody that was like, you know, he saw us as having the same DNA as them, so that we were like on, you know, should be like on the same page. Whereas obviously like Winston Churchill was just like no.
Do you think there's going to be another big one?
Well, I think at the moment you see something brewing. I think this is a fear of the time we're living in, isn't it? I mean, you've got China keep basically saying that Taiwan is legally part of China, and then the people of Taiwan are like, no, we are freaking Taiwanese people. We do not want to be under the freaking like tyranny of communist China. And the Chinese people are just basically like, no, you are part of China, and they're like, no, we're not. And it's just getting to the point now where it's like the only reason why they're not is because they fear that it would basically like America and Europe and stuff would get involved. But the more time's going on, you see they're like pushing the boundaries more and more and more. Obviously, you've got the war in Ukraine and Russia.
Which I still think, you know, obviously that with Ukraine is getting a lot of support from the UK and from different countries around the world. So like how Russia isn't seeing that as like a, you know, a war already against
they're
all of
obviously
us as
super
well.
angry about it. And apparently Russians first, more than any other nation, apparently the Russians are most angry as well and just like annoyed in general with the British people, because Boris Johnson was so openly in favour of the Ukrainians. And Boris Johnson was the first like leader of any world nation that was like, we are openly going to send like ammunition and stuff
like
to.
For me, that's like a really dangerous kind of like for all of us.
Because you're instantly not becoming. You're like being the opposite of what Switzerland's always been like. You're taking yourself out of that impartiality, aren't you? To just instantly being like, well, we clearly are like supporting and backing this side.
Yeah.
And then once the UK did, obviously like America and some other countries started doing it and stuff as well. But
isn't a lot of Russia against what's going on as well? Like I think it's quite split over there, where a lot of people are trying to leave and a lot of people absolutely hate what's going on.
Well, I think
like,
obviously
people are being called in to fight, aren't they?
Yeah.
And they don't want to be doing it.
Well, I remember hearing about when that was first put into place, like that rule was put into place. I can't remember what it's called. It's like national service or something, isn't it? Where it's like obligatory, basically. Every man between the age of like 18 and 60 or something like
has to do a certain time.
Has to enlist.
Yeah.
Or I think in wartime it might even be like until the end of the war.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
some countries have it like just as part of their national service, as part of being
Israel.
grown up.
In Israel, that's the thing, because they have such a low.
South Korea as well.
Yeah, because I think it's the same reason with South Korea as it is with Israel, because they're a relatively small country, but they have a lot of enemies on basically all surrounding them. It's almost like if you're a small country with a small population and there's like basically a lot of people around you that want to basically essentially beat you up, then it's probably sensible in it for like everybody to at least get involved a bit, or at least have that background training, so that if you do need to be called up. Because look at Israel's being like sort of bombed like regularly, like from the outside. Obviously South Korea are always under threat from North Korea, and obviously South Korea, very much like Japan, they're interesting. Like Japan, like modern day Japan and South Korea, they're almost like democratic. And if I'm right, I think I'm right in saying as well, like capitalist societies. But they're almost like surrounded on all borders by like basically communists and dictatorships as well. Like obviously North Korea is a complete dictatorship. China as well is like a communist society and pretty much a dictatorship as well from what I know about it. Pretty much just like if you speak out against the authorities, you're like, what's it? They've got that social credit system in China, which is I think is mental. Have you heard about that?
Man, that scares me.
This is crazy. This is like something from a movie, mate. They've got a social credit system. So basically, if you do anything that the government doesn't like, they will lower your social credit score. And what that will do is, say if it went low enough, you no longer would be able to buy like food out. You would no longer be able to like get public transport.
Whoa.
You're like, I think things like all of your bills and stuff go up.
Yeah,
and
they
so
can
basically
impose certain things.
So it's like you're being punished for being an individual. So you have to be like a good little puppet, essentially, and a good little sheep, and then your social credit score.
And this is the worry about CBDCs and digital currencies when they're central bank digital currencies rather than like blockchain technology, which is like not
it's free.
That doesn't have any of these rules. That it's through that technology that the Chinese government can actually implement that social credit score and stuff. So it's almost like that's why people are scared of like CBDCs happening in European countries and stuff, because there's something about in Europe at the moment when they were talking about it, and like you wouldn't be able to do a transaction above £1,000 or something, because it would all be because they want to dissuade like these big like money laundering and things. So it's all classed as like, oh, it's safe for you, but it just takes away your like autonomy to be able to like make big payments and stuff. And they could implement these switching off of your bank card or your money.
How scary is that?
And that's why I don't like the idea
today.
Yeah,
and you're literally basically being punished by the government for having like your own opinions or your own thoughts and way of life.
I remember Rich Sav's boyfriend told me that his granddad, whenever and a couple of people that he works with as well, whenever they get paid, they literally just go to the bank and draw every bit of money that out.
Yeah, I've heard a couple of people
apart
do that,
apart from what you need to pay certain bills that come out your account and that.
Yeah, just leave
and I was like, whoa, that's crazy. But it's because of this. Like, he was like, I don't want the banks making interest on the money that I have.
Well, you always say, don't you, that like that's why everyone always says like cash is king.
Yeah,
because like say if you pay for something on a card, then like the bank's getting a certain amount of that and blah blah blah. Where if you pay, if say you whatever service it is, whether you're paying for something in a restaurant or getting your haircut, whatever, if you pay someone cash, 100% of that cash is going to the person you're giving it to.
Yeah.
Then that cannot be disputed. We have to take a quick break, but we'll be back in a minute, guys. We'll carry on this conversation. Interesting stuff.
You're not in Kansas anymore. You're on Pandora, ladies and gentlemen. Respect that fact every second of every day.
Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to Pandora's Box on AW Radio, or you might be listening to us on YouTube or Spotify.
Audio radio.
Audio radio as well, mate, in Kent. But whichever way you're listening to us, we love you and appreciate you. Thanks for joining us today. We were talking about we've been talking about all lots of stuff. We were talking about World War II, the creation of the atom bomb, the social credit system in China and how mad that is, Japanese culture. We were just saying while we were listening to some music then, about how Japan could literally not be any more different now than it is. Than it was during World War II. I mean, for a start, I think as a Westerner, you feel very welcomed and stuff in Japan, and obviously we have let's face it, a lot of Japanese stuff is very popular in the West. Whether it's like anime, like how big are things like Pokemon and Dragon Ball Z and all those things are like massive.
Isn't Pokemon one of the biggest brands in the world?
Oh, it must be.
That's crazy.
I think
Pokemon, Coca-Cola, and McDonald's,
and like Man United.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? Even if you aren't into any of those things, you've heard of them. Even if you are the most remote African tribe or something like that, you're like, oh yeah, Man United, yeah, Pokemon, yeah, Coca-Cola, yeah. But it is interesting. Obviously, we also have on a broader scale like Nintendo. Obviously, Nintendo created Pokemon with their Game Boy games and stuff. But who doesn't know about Nintendo? Nintendo has such a legacy, and PlayStation's Japanese as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sony, because it's Sony, isn't it? Sony PlayStation,
Sony are Japanese.
Yeah, Sony a Japanese brand, and they also Sony are considered almost the best TVs and stuff, aren't they? As well, you all know because obviously you worked in.
Sony's are good.
Yeah,
Sony's are good. Sony and LG I like.
Yeah.
LG for the win for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I just remember the last time I bought a television. I went with a Samsung in the end, which is South Korean, I think, isn't it? South Korean brand. And I remember this really nerdy guy in Courage was really hard selling me the Sony, but I'm sure what he was saying was true, but he was basically going about how it was Sony's are considered 8 years ahead of their competitors in terms of everything that they provide in the telly, and it's almost whatever is in a Sony, everyone else will have in years time, but they'll be the first ones to have it, and the sound was the best, the picture was the best, and all this stuff. And I could just see the look on his disgust on his face when I eventually just went with the Samsung. Because in my head, I was looking at them both, and I was listening to everything that he was saying, but the Samsung was the same size. And to me, it just seemed like the sound, the picture and the sound quality was about the same. And I thought, well, if I can't really tell much of a difference in here, then how will I tell much of a difference at home? Yeah. The only difference is that the Sony's was $3,000 and the Samsung was £850. And I was like, well, I'm saving a lot of money. £850 is still a lot of money. Do you know what I mean? That I was spending that day. I don't really need to spend another freaking 2,250. I
think Samsung's better in bright colours. Sony's and LG better in dark.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's quite a simple way of breaking it down. But they've got different technology like OLED and Samsung has QLED. But I won't break it all down. Knowledge. But that's the main gist of how you would explain it. Samsung better bright. LG better dark.
right, that's cool. I always have my telly in what's called movie mode, because I always just notice it almost makes everything a bit warmer and a bit more chill, and it's not so harsh on my eyes, which I think especially if it's late at night and you start to turn a lot of the lights off, sort of warming down for bed, you don't want something that's really blaring and loads of mad contrast and everything. It almost makes it look like you've got sunglasses on. That's what I always think when it's in movie mode. Yeah, it just looks like it did before, but almost with a very slight tint of sunglasses.
Since we're talking about the future and Japan, and obviously Japan is very, very futuristic. I wanted to speak a little bit, or bring up at least the Las Vegas Sphere. Have you guys seen this?
No.
The Las Vegas Sphere. So it's a huge sphere. So it's a building they've brought. You might be able to get up a few videos of it where it's in Las Vegas, and it they've done multiple different things. They put faces on it. They made it a big eyeball at one point. It looks crazy from the outside, massive. And recently they did the first opening ceremony of this Las Vegas Sphere where U2 U2 played. And this is maybe the most futuristic building I've ever seen in my life. Watching some of the videos of the inside of this thing.
Look at that.
It's crazy, and watching it makes you feel like this is going to be the future of like going to buildings and just being in a completely
that is such a Las Vegas
place.
building, isn't it? That is such a Las Vegas building.
You might be able to get up
Whoa,
like
giant
a
baby head.
That's scary.
So you can project images on it, or
yeah, and on the inside it's the exact same. So it's like the biggest 360 cinema screen. So they had like, when U2 played, one of the things they did is they made it all like code, and then the ceiling like falls in on you and it fully looks like it's just coming like literally about to just implode the building. And then they did bits where it was like outside, out in like the Nevada deserts or whatever, and it's just like as far, it looks so realistic, it's ridiculous. It might be cool to try and see if we can like get a video on YouTube of what it actually looked like.
I've got a little video of U2 playing, but I mean, you can see some of it. That's pretty crazy. I guess it's like this is from the inside of the building though. So, but yeah, that still looks nuts. It looks very, very trippy. I imagine sitting there watching that with like some crazy like psychedelic prog metal.
Yeah, they've had
Like,
some of the
like
visuals
epic.
they had on there were just like ridiculous. I was watching it just thinking that is full future.
Imagine taking
walking
somebody
into that.
from like 5,000 years ago and just taking them there and just
or
like,
one of those uncontacted tribes people.
Yeah, that would be insane.
It reminds me of the Van Gogh thing I went to in Bristol.
Oh, yeah.
And when they just literally made a whole room like that, but on a smaller scale. And it was square, but just going through his life history through art, but merging all the art together and making it all animated and stuff. That was pretty cool. He just kind of lied on some bean bags like on the floor and just looked up at it and that, and it was like it's pretty cool. But that's next level.
Yeah. Pretty crazy.
I wonder how they're
Pretty
getting
crazy.
on with what was the other one? The mile.
The line.
The line. It. So they got the sphere, and the line.
That is some crazy futuristic stuff. And yeah, do you know what? It's so funny you said that, Drew, because I was literally thinking yesterday, I wonder what's going on with that. Let's have a look, shall we?
I know it was under construction at one point. I've seen like photos of them like digging out the line, but I don't know if they've actually started building anything yet.
Yeah.
Is it 2030 it's meant to be done by?
I have no idea, but it's annoying because if you look it up on Google Images, it seems to be primarily pictures of what it's supposed to be.
Right.
Oh, look,
right.
we've got some pictures
yeah.
here. 1/5 of Neom, Saudi Arabia's futuristic city is already complete, according to CEO.
1/5. It's quite a
They're
lot.
building it so quick. Like to think that whole city is going to be built in 2030.
I'll tell you what, man, the Saudi Arabians
Crazy.
have just got their like culture and society down.
They don't mess around, do they?
They have like basically virtually no crime. Like everybody is safe. Like, you know,
Quite a few one-armed people rocket warrior, right?
yeah. But you know, people that definitely won't be ever naughty ever again.
Yeah.
But it's like, you know, in every single town and village all across the UK, like there's just like crime every single day. And do you know what I mean? It's like where obviously like police have gotten like softer over the years, and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? It's like obviously people that essentially just aren't, I don't know, just people that I guess are just out for like a lot of personal gain and they don't really care about who they step on to get that. Just like shoplifting, like muggings, violence, assaults and stuff have just like, you know, become a lot more frequent in the UK. I guess just because the UK punishment under the legal system, just, you know, there's not enough prosecution. There's not enough prosecution going on. For these people, there's not harsh enough prosecution. Whereas like in Saudi Arabia, you see, because they have such harsh prosecutions, everyone's going to behave themselves. But I think that's so good. You
Is
know,
Dubai Saudi Arabia? No. That's
United Emirates. Oh
yeah.
no, what is it?
I know it's really good with the cleanliness of the city and the rules
Yeah,
that
I mean,
are there and
it's
stuff as well.
United
It's like a
Arab
similar
Emirates,
thing.
Yeah.
It's the Dubai is the most populous city in the United Arab Emirates and the capital of the Emirate of Dubai.
UAE.
Because I remember hearing people talking about it and being like, when something needs to be done there's no like red tape. It's like if there's a pothole, like the
Just gets done.
Sultan or King or whatever it is, it's just like do that and they just do it like there and then, and it's always just super beautiful. There's a lot of money there and everything.
Yeah, like to be fair, like some of these pictures of Dubai are like freaking beautiful.
My parents said when they went, it's just like the most clean place you can go to. Like
yeah, apparently,
no rubbish
apparently
anywhere.
Saudi Arabia's the same, and another city that's apparently like that. And Uncle Johnny used to live there. Is Kuwait. He lived in he was a like sports, you know, like a uni lecturer in sports, like
cool
for like years in Kuwait. And he said it was like insane. You know, he said it's like absolutely boiling out on the streets and stuff and at the beaches, but every single building you go into is like aircon, like every single one. He said like the gyms there are like there's not even a gym like it in the UK. He says you go there and they're like massive. It's almost like the room is as big as the eye can see, and it's just like thousands and thousands of pieces of equipment, and everything
Sounds like a dream, man.
Everything is like sparkling clean. Yeah, he said everything is like sparkling clean. I know that a lot of professional like American bodybuilders and stuff nowadays go to places like Dubai and Kuwait and Abu Dhabi and stuff like that to train. They basically spend their year training there because they've got state-of-the-art everything. Everything there is like state-of-the-art. So it's like almost like if you're doing that for a living, why not go to like what's considered like the pinnacle of the world stuff? Whereas obviously, although America has obviously amazing gyms, but a bit like Britain,
lots of crime as well.
A lot of it's stuff, but it's a lot of the gyms are considered like spit and sawdust gyms, which and like a lot of people like that. Do you know what I mean? Like I like that, and I know that like people like Ronnie Coleman, who's probably one of the most famous bodybuilders of all time. Like he trained at like a spit and sawdust gym, so you don't need fancy equipment to get, to be successful. But I think a lot of people almost like that idea. Okay, like this is like the most state of the art equipment. Like every one of these machines in this gym is like mad R&D. Do you know what I mean? This is like being designed by like these crazy freaking sports scientists with far too much money, and they have just worked together with like engineers to make like machines that will just almost turn you into like the perfect bodybuilder. Do you know what I mean? So you don't have to just spend so much time just like deadlifting and squatting and benching like ridiculous amount of weight, I guess. Yeah, very interesting though.
I remember hearing as well like that the place used to be where you had money and stuff is like you'd go to London and you see all like the Lamborghinis like driving around and people like felt safe there and stuff like that, but apparently now it's Dubai. Like it's changed from like London to Dubai because of all, and a lot of the thing with that was apparently because of the crime and stuff.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Of the way.
There's mad knife crime in London nowadays.
Yeah,
a lot of neighbourhoods are like almost like written off. Like, you know what I mean? Certain neighbourhoods in London now, it's like just don't walk on them like past like 6 o'clock. You know, like straight up.
Damn, son.
Yeah, these are some pictures of Kuwait here. It look pretty mad.
That looks like it's like a hubbly bubbly pipe.
Yeah, well, that's probably what it was supposed to what it's looked like. But yeah, JP said it was really nice because he said when he lived there, you just go to like the beach like every day.
That's so good.
Just like swim in the sea, and the sea's just like beautiful. Like look at the sea there and look at the beach.
Is that where he brewed his own alcohol? Because it wasn't. You're not allowed to drink there or something.
Yeah, alcohol was illegal in Kuwait. So obviously being a British freaking
R&D specialist,
like a British R&D rugby player, he was like Johnny cannot go without his booze. So yeah, he would just brew like some just booze in his room.
Cool.
Obviously, it's pretty easy to do.
Yeah.
And he said he would just like, sometimes he would just accidentally make like ridiculously strong stuff, and he would just like sit in his room late at night, just freaking hammered. Pretty funny, really, isn't it?
They're super cool, those buildings.
Yeah, I say like I have a lot of respect for these places. I think, and it's interesting as well, because they're very, very conservative places and very sort of religious places. But it just goes to show that there's actually a lot to be said for that sort of way of life. Because I think, in the Western world a lot nowadays, the inclination is to sort of criticize that sort of way of living, and don't get me wrong, I think by our standards, obviously, like a lot of certain things in some of these countries are like, say, like a bit sexist and things like that and stuff like that. But they also just have incredibly high standards. And obviously with high standards comes quality of life. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you having high standards, in my opinion, is a good thing. Now, if you didn't have any standards, or like what, then life just becomes almost like a cesspit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
No standards of cleanliness, no standards of morality, no standards of anything. What, just like everyone's just going to be in some dirty free-for-all orgy all the time, just doing loads of freaking drugs everywhere and just like mugging everyone and just like nobody's possessions or there's no respect or decency. Do you know what I mean? It's like.
Yeah, getting a good balance between those things is like, still like I would find it really hard, say, like being in a place where like there's like, rules against like, well, I mean there is against lots of things here even, but like just like, like no alcohol and you can get your arm chopped off if you like, do you know what I mean? Like, I mean, I don't know what you would have to do to get your arm chopped off. Yeah, it wouldn't be anything to do with alcohol.
I don't think it's necessarily.
I think it's stealing, isn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say.
I think I know. Obviously, I don't know. I'm sure it depends very slightly from country to country, obviously, but I think one of the main things they do is they would like take you out into the desert and they make you do like hard labor. I can't remember. I'm sure there are things that you could do that could potentially cause you to lose a hand or something like that. But I think, if you like break laws, I think you're taken out into the desert and you're given like the bare minimum of food. So I'm talking like maybe like a handful of food a day, but you would be made to do like 12 hours, 14 hours hard labor in the sun. and then you'll be put somewhere to sleep, and then you wake up again, and then you're doing another. Do you know what I mean? And then
it's like it's harsh, but it gets the job done.
And I think that would almost teach you respect as well.
It's basically don't break any laws over there.
Yeah, and also to be honest, it probably teaches you a lot of hard work, which probably means that when you become reintegrated into society, not only have you had a lot of time to think about the error of your ways, but also anything you do after that is going to seem probably like a dawdle, isn't it? Because if you can do 14 hours hard labour in the desert with like no water and like a handful of food a day, which is probably like the most unnutritious, just like throwing you scraps, then anything else that you do in the city is probably going to seem pretty sound. Do you know what I mean? Like,
you're saying about how some countries have the where you've got to go into the army. What's it called? Like not force of inscription.
It's like something like national.
National service.
National service. Yeah.
Like that. I remember my dad always said to me, he went into the Navy when he was like 16 or 17 for like 9 years, and it was like he's like it's the best thing that ever happened to me because of like discipline and stuff. So you know the camaraderie, like the discipline, all of that kind of thing. So I can imagine having just that as a rule of like, you know, having to go into national service and be like subject to all of this like applying of discipline to yourself and everything. Like that could be like a really helpful thing, I think, in the development of, you know, you on your life path and stuff, like, you know. So I also think it's all bad.
I also think no, not at all. I also think that, you know, there's lots of like tales, and, you know, I'm not religious at all, but, you know, in like the Bible, obviously you have tales of things like Sodom and Gomorrah, and what that essentially is almost like a warning tale, isn't it? It's like a lot of these stories are almost like, what's the moral of the story and stuff. Like a lot of like fairy tales are exactly the same, aren't they? It's almost like, don't be greedy,
teaching morality through the story.
Yeah, like don't be greedy or don't be foolish or blah 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 blah. That's what all these fairy tales and religious stories are about. But in Sodom and Gomorrah, it was like a place, wasn't it, where just like every like 24/7. It was just like orgies and drugs and thievery and murder.
I don't know about this story.
No,
I don't know
about
it.
You don't know about Sodom and Gomorrah?
Tell us the story.
Is it in the Bible? Is it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm no expert on it, but yeah. So like in Sodom and Gomorrah in the Bible,
is that why it's called sodomy?
Yes. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. So Sodom and Gomorrah, it was like this place, and they basically became more and more like uncivilized and more hedonistic. So, you know, thinking of all the cheap pleasures in life, everything was just like, as I said, orgies, drugs, thieving, murder. If you want something, you take something regardless of the consequences. And it was basically, it's like, became like, you know, it was more and more like that. And then basically in the end, then God just basically sent a meteorite down and then just blew up the whole place. And then it's like, it just flattened the land, because it was like everybody there was like a seedy scumbag, essentially, just like immoral, selfish, just scumbag. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, so like God just flattened the place. And I think, you know, there's obviously, as I said, I'm not religious at all, but obviously there's a lesson in that, isn't there? And there's a lesson that, like, you know, having rules and being civilized obviously has a lot of upsides, you know?
Yeah.
And then, as long as you mix it with that freedom. I mean, it's like Jocko.
Yeah.
I'm a massive fan of Jocko Willink, and he always says, like, discipline is freedom.
Yeah.
But it's like similar to that. Do you know what I mean? It's like, freedom isn't necessarily just like, I just want to do what I want whenever I want.
It's almost like a paradox to me. It's one of these paradoxes that works, because it can feel that it's not free, but it gives you freedom.
Well, that's one of the things that Jocko always says about like working out, and it's a very easy way of describing like why discipline is freedom, because it's like the idea with working out is it's like you put time in to make yourself like a machine, and as a result, your life is easy. So the discipline creates the freedom. Yeah. Freedom of it could be taken in a literal sense. Freedom of movement, freedom in your body. You're not confined to a wheelchair. You're not confined to it. You don't need a walking stick to move. You're not weak. You're not unable to carry in your family's shopping bags. Do you know what I mean? You don't need to hire somebody to do your gardening because you're so unfit to do it. You can do everything yourself, and that's given you freedom. So discipline is freedom. And obviously, in other ways, you could apply that then to lots of other things in your life as well.
Like, I think about it with like financial freedom and stuff as well. It's like, you have to like work, and you have to like think of this way of like making money, but then when you have enough of it, it opens up more time for you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's like that, but it's a really hard one for me to get my head around. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like, it seems to be like such a rat race to be able to like be earning more and all that kind of stuff. But then that financial freedom, because having it gives you options.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, I think I wish I'd done a lot of things differently, sort of when I left school when I was younger now. And I know hindsight's always 20/20, and there's nothing I could do about that. So that's just the way it is, and I'm fine with that. But I remember like reading a thing, and it was like saying, you know, like almost society teaches you that it's almost like when you leave school, that point, say between like being like 16 and say like 25, it's like, oh, just enjoy yourself, do what you want to do, like just, you know, because you're never going to get that time back again. And I was saying like, actually, that's almost like the worst advice you can give a young person. It's like, no, put in the work then, and then
your whole life's going to be sorted.
If you put the work in then, by the time you are 30, you will probably be sorted for life.
Yeah.
And then you can
or
have
at
a
least
family.
on the direction that you know
you'll already be on the housing ladder. You'll have thousands of pounds in the month every bank that in the bank every month that you can rely on if you need to dip into that for whatever reason. Let's face it, we all have to sometimes, whether it's cars or whatever. You want to go on holiday, all these things, man. You know, so you always have that in the background, so you can then, if you choose to, whether you want to, you know, and let's face it, you might just want to stay single, but if you want to, you can then, you know, have a missus, have children and stuff, and you can provide for those people and never have to stress about it too much. Whereas what you see with a lot of people is they only start sorting themselves out when they're in their late 20s, and then by the time, say you start sorting yourself out when you're 26, 27, well, by the time you're 30, you've only really got 3 or 4 hard years of work behind you. If you start that when you're 16, you've got 14 years of work.
Yeah, and also like having a direction, like when you're, you know, like all the people that really inspire me, that have done something with their life, and I'm like, whoa, like a massive similarity is like the vision that they have. Like they have a vision. Exactly.
He always says that.
And it's like having that vision from early
Got to
on.
have a vision.
You know, like that just like, but a lot of the time it's hard to get that
decide
direct.
What that vision
is. I find
know?
it crazy using the example of Tolkien that you were saying earlier, like how long he spent on those books. He must have put so much faith behind that this was going to work, this was going to be it. Do you know what I mean? Because if that had flopped, which, let's be honest, no matter how good things are, there is a chance that it can. There could be work out there now that could be the best curated work ever to some people, but it will never be discovered because it just didn't get released at the right time or hit the right people or have the right backing behind it. So the idea to put everything into this one idea and then it paying off, that's such like
I don't know,
cool...
did Tolkien, like, was he like a teacher or something as
He was
well?
a scholar of Cambridge.
Yeah,
this wasn't like his...
that's what I mean, he's already a scholar of like Cambridge, you know, like so like
he was like a very well respected
right.
man.
But this was almost probably what he did when he was having
like
a whiskey of an evening. Instead of watching TV. Like,
I guess that was like his side project.
Yeah,
I guess.
yeah.
I mean, that was his passion. Yeah, and obviously one of his best friends as well was C.S. Lewis, who wrote Narnia. So that's just like a cool little fact, I always think.
Yeah.
Because I mean, obviously,
Narnia.
You're
some of your peers.
Yeah, I do think there's a big thing to be said for that. You know, when they say like you are the company you keep. Same saying, essentially, in different words. But I do very much believe in that, and I think that's why you have to be very careful about who you spend your time with.
Yeah, definitely.
As well, because it's like, you know, if you see a certain person, you're like, man, if I spend my time with that person like too much, like, you know, I want nothing but what's best for them. But if I almost through like my own kindness or something, like devote too much time to that person, then their ways are going to start creeping into my life.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you almost didn't realize until it's too late. And I'm sure like a lot of people listening can think of people that have had that effect on them in the past. And obviously, you know, that's on you because you're giving that time to that person. But sometimes, obviously, I think especially when you're a very young person, it's because, let's face it, you do things when you're a teenager and in your early 20s that you do without even realizing it. Do you know what I mean? Like, you don't necessarily even think about these things until a bit later on in life. But then you think back, and obviously, you know, there's another saying, hindsight is always 20/20. Do you know what I mean? I think with a certain amount of life experience, you know, you think, oh, okay, yeah. You're almost like got that in your head then. So you maybe if you see somebody, like, it reminds you of somebody else that maybe in the past was like, you know, sent you down a bad path or something like that. Then you're like, okay, yeah. You know.
I think inspiration...
I'll say hello to them and what's up in the street, but I'm not going to spend my time with them. Like, you know.
I think inspiration is such an important thing as well, particularly when we're talking about how people do set their goals and then commit to them fully. You don't only need to believe in yourself and believe in the vision you have, but you need the inspiration from others to be like, this is something that I can achieve. This is something I can do.
Yeah.
So if you surround yourself with people that are going to make you feel inspired, then I think it becomes a whole lot easier to commit to that one idea.
Oh yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, for sure. Just realizing that things are accomplishable. Like, we're all human at the end of the day. If somebody can accomplish something, then so can everybody else in the world, isn't it? It's just like how much work are you willing to put into it? And if you're not willing to put work into something, like, we can't all put work into everything, so that's fine. But just try and pick a couple of things that are like personal to you, that you want to put, that you're willing to put the work in, and then you know, if you really put the time and the effort in, then as the years go by, you will start realizing that in your peer group you are one of the best at that. If you're willing, and to that's put the time
it's that time and effort. Like there's this distorted thing in your head of like, oh, if you're good at something, like, then that's cool. Like that's going to be your thing. And like I've always felt with music, it's like, you know, I'm really into that. I like, you know, it feels good and everything, like to do that. But if you don't put the time and the effort into all of the bits around it that will make that be a success, then you're always just going to be like, just, you know, not like, you're just going to be in this certain place of it. Okay. And that's it. And like what you're saying about like peers and inspiration and stuff, like seeing other artists that I've played with and stuff that are like on these UK tours and they're doing it. And I'm
Look at the Umberia lads.
Yeah,
they're like,
yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I always think they're like so impressive. Like Umberia, like an upcoming metal band, like in the UK that like, you know, Drew's played with them a couple of times back when he was in Death by Kai and stuff like that. But they treat their band like it's a proper job. Yeah, you know? And you need to do that. And I've always been so against that because I'm like, oh no, it'll take away from the creativity, man. Like it's gonna be if it's gonna become too much like a chore, it's gonna be turning into like a job, and then I'm not gonna like music. And it's like, no, you just need to actually put hard effort into doing all these bits to make it a success. You see all the most successful bands, and even people that you'd almost think it was surprising, because a lot of these people are nutters and often were like on vast amount of drugs and drinking and stuff.
They had work ethic, man. Look at Lynyrd Skynyrd, like
Lynyrd Skynyrd, Black Sabbath. They all practiced every single day for like a large percentage of the day. Every day. And if they weren't practicing, they were gigging or writing material. But probably doing all three every week to week. And just slowly building up that fan base, slowly building up that recognition, honing their skills, just getting a little bit better, getting better at songwriting, getting better technically, you know, getting tighter. You know, all of these things that just require a lot of time. And you know, and it's funny because you watch it you listen about it in documentaries or you read about it in books or something, and you're like, man, you know, you think about like Ozzy Osbourne or Lynyrd Skynyrd, like, you know, these are crazy guys. These are crazy partying dudes, but they were treating it like a job. They were treating it like a job.
You had that aspect of it, that
like,
hard
that
work.
9 to 5 almost. Well, it didn't have to be 9 to 5 because I say a lot of them obviously would get up late, but basically putting in 8, 9, 10 hours a day. It doesn't matter. Obviously, it's individual to you what time schedule you want to do. Do you know what I mean? If you want to, I mean, the Metallica guys are really notorious for doing it almost like 2 to midnight. Because early on in their days, they would stay up like all night partying, and then they would a lot of the time wouldn't even go to sleep until like 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, which is hilarious. And then they would wake up at like midday, come into the studio, start, you know, have a coffee, have breakfast, and then often they wouldn't even start doing something until about 2 o'clock. You know, and then they would do stuff right until late in the night. Apparently Lars was the worst, apparently. Apparently Lars was so bad that James used to get like really annoyed with him sometimes. Like,
mate, that sounds like so much fun though. You're still doing the work, but you're doing it like, you know,
just like these like nocturnal metalers. They were still putting 8-10 hours of work in a day, but they were just like nocturnal, you know?
And for me as well, it's like, even if there's things that you're not good at, that you think you're not good at, that doesn't mean that you just like you know, don't do them. It means like, that just means that you just got to push through it and just get good at those things. You know, if you put time into it.
It's like how much do you want it though, isn't it? You know?
Exactly.
And as I said, you know, we can't obviously, there are so many things in the world. Obviously, you know, it doesn't mean, as I said, that you need to be trying to be like the best at everything in your life or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Because I mean, you know, I say we all know like great artists and stuff, and respect the fact that, like, you know, I can see how like something that I've developed a lot of skill in, that person has put the same amount of time of effort into that. And as a result, they have the equivalent progress in that I do in this. And as a result, there's like a respect there, I think, you know, and I think especially if you feel like a mutual respect in return, when you can tell that someone's giving you that sort of respect as well. Do you know what I mean? And you're like, cool, you know?
I think it's something I definitely struggle with. I think I'm very, like, you know, when people say to have a passion of something, if you were to speak to someone, you said, oh, what's your passion? A lot of people would know exactly what that's going to be. For you, Drew, it might be music. For you, it might be music or working out and fitness.
So I have absolutely loads, which is one of my struggle, because I've become like a bit of a jack of all trades. But I mean, there are obviously like a couple that stand out. I think I find with mine, if someone was to ask me that, I think I'd just look and go, well, there's a lot of things I really enjoy and a lot of things I put time into and you know, try and learn more about. But I don't know if I have one sole. I think you're at a disadvantage. I think you're at a disadvantage because of the time you were born into. To be fair, like you live in an age of distraction. Yes. Whereas me and Drew, even though we're, let's face it, in the grand scheme of things, not too far removed from you, that 13 years difference or whatever.
There's
12,
a lot of
13 years
development in distraction.
We grew up in a time where there wasn't that necessary distraction. Like we grew up in a time where, you know, when we were in primary school and in the first few years of secondary school and stuff, and even when we had phones, it wasn't the phones like they are now. They didn't have internet or anything like that. So basically all the way through secondary school as well, like you didn't have that level of distraction. Like you would go home from school. If you wanted to call on a mate, you would walk to their house and you would knock on the door. Yeah. You know, and in the evening, you would get home from school, you might watch like TV for a little bit, and then, you know, you'd have dinner with your family, and then you'd sort of start wrapping up for bedtime. Whereas now, you're doing all that stuff, but at the same time, a million things going on your phone.
Yeah.
You're messaging 5 of your different people that you know. You know, you're getting work messages, you're getting social messages, you're checking Facebook, you're checking Instagram, you're checking TikTok, you're checking whatever, you're watching things on YouTube. You know what I mean? It's like, man, that's a level of distraction there where your brain's becoming conditioned to like sporadic information.
Yeah, definitely.
And then as a result, if you have to sit down and put like hours of concentration into like one thing, then your brain's probably going to struggle with that.
Yeah, I mean, I notice it so much with my. I used to love like, and I still can every now and again, like sit down, properly indulge myself in a film or a TV show or something like that, or even a book. But nowadays, I definitely find it a lot harder. Like, for example, I was saying to you, I was trying to watch Game of Thrones the other day. Watched 2 episodes yesterday. Really enjoyed it. And that was because I finally put my phone down and I went, no. But,
No.
yeah, there was a couple days before that where I got it up on the screen and I was like, right, I just need to check one thing. You know,
pulls you out of the...
And then literally, I just didn't watch it for like 2 days. Because I had it up and I was like, oh, but now I've been on my phone for like 2 hours and time's passed and now I want to do something else, you know? And it's so hard to break out of that curse, we'll call it. I've got an app now. I've got an app now called Opal. I think I've spoken to you guys about this guys before, but it's like an app you download and then it just blocks all apps from your phone. So from 9 to 5 in the day, I just can't go on any like social medias or anything like that because it's just so distracting. You know, it's so hard to focus on anything in your day when you've just got this constant like gadget in your hand that you know is instant dopamine if you go on it at the right time and hit the right button and watch the right video. But that's never a guarantee. So you could sit on there for 10-20 minutes and
maybe longer,
nothing. You know,
I think that's part of the problem. I think that's definitely part of the issue. I don't know about you though. I think obviously a lot of it depends on the individual and things like that, but like with me, I think too much of that, I almost get like brain fuzz, and then it almost like annoys. I almost get like a bit angry about it. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like I want to concentrate on one thing at a time, and if there's a million things going on, it just almost like annoys me. Yeah, no, so then I'm just like, look, I don't want to be dealing with like 10 things at once. I want to be dealing with one thing at a time. So if I want to watch like something on the telly, I'm going to watch that. Okay, and I'm not going to check my phone. And then, you know, like, if like Em goes to like the bathroom or something, I might quickly check my phone. But then she'll come back and I'll put it down again. And that's it. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I don't want to be freaking doing that. Like, it annoys me. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I started reading this book and it really reminds me of that. I'm only like a little bit into it, and it's about essentialism. It's this thing called essentialism, and it's this guy who's helped loads of like really high up CEOs and everything be more like productive and
focus on the things that basically are essential to your life.
And in this idea of essentialism, he draws a picture and it's like a circle with loads of tiny little arrows like going out, and he says a lot of people all the time you get in this thing where your mind is in so many different directions, so it's like just loads of little arrows pointing out all out of this circle, and it's like you know, you can think of that as like, you know, just being distracted by so many different things. And then he drew a circle next to it with the adding up all of those little arrows, like the little wicks of the arrows, and then just putting them all on one line, and it's like this high, you know, and it's almost saying like take all of those with the same effort. So it's not about effort because it's taking you just as much effort to do all of these different things, but just take all of that effort and focus it on one thing. Like that's how high you can get, like in doing that thing. And that's like the bare like thing of it. And I was like, well, that's really cool. Just becoming like more focused on singular things rather than being so distracted on many things. Because I find that's what I'm like all the time. I'm like, start doing this, then I start doing that, and then I do this, then I do that, then I'm like, what have I done today? Rather than like
you've completed like 10% of like 10 things.
Yeah, exactly. Jack of all trades, master of none. Like I have that a lot with myself, and it's like, this is quite good. And he talks about like people in like work and stuff like that. Like say if you're in more of an office environment and that, like being like a yes man of like trying to help people get used to that and stuff. And he's like basically like the power of saying no and looking at what is essential, and what his idea of as essential is what you are best at and what you can contribute most to for the good of whatever you're doing. So like almost living by those criteria, make a decision out of all of the choices that you have to like act in that moment by putting it to that criteria, and then that will give you the choice that you say no to everything else, and you like almost like brutally say no to everything else. But then he's saying that will actually gain more respect from people and stuff like that, because you will actually be delivering something that's better and that. And it's like it's a cool concept, you know. Like I'm definitely
like working smarter, not harder, essentially.
Yeah.
I also think at the end of the day as well, and it's like you're going to respect somebody if they do their job really well more than if they don't do their job very well. So that's essentially it's almost like you're saying like you use your common sense to do things that you're good at. Yeah. Why would you put the time into something that you're not good at?
Yeah.
You know?
I love how we're now all dropping the word essentially in every sentence.
What you're essentially
saying, you know.
That sounds really interesting. I'd like to read that.
And he said it was funny as well. Like one guy that like first like made it clear to him, he was in this job, and like they were gonna like fire him or they offered him a redundancy because he'd put his time into he was doing a lot and he was a real integral part of the company, but it just wasn't, you know, something was missing. And he was like, oh, you know, I might just start doing my own thing and actually be a what do you call it, like not an advisor, like a top contractor for the company like if they need coach. Anything. no, like so doing the job that he's doing now, but doing it as his own company.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like so say he was an advisor of this certain aspect of the company. Right. Rather than working for the company, he would just be doing it on that advisory basis and getting paid for it. Right. Yeah. For his own company. So the guy he was talking to about it was like, okay, just want you to make one change. Instead of quitting your job, just almost like pretend you have and pretend that you've come back with that advisory role that's for your own company. And he was like, all right. And like, so he just kind of like did that. And then the choices that he was making was so different to when he was just normally working and integrated into it, that he was just started doing a way better job and like, you know, and only doing the essential things and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, that's pretty cool.
That is cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, man.
Yeah.
Just going back to much earlier on in the show, so I've just like looked up like why did Japan join Nazi Germany? A lot of it's like common sense. It just says like, you know, in the 1930s, both countries adopted aggressive militaristic attitudes towards their respective regions. This led to a rapprochement and eventually a political and military alliance that included Italy, known as the Axis powers. Also
included Italy.
Yeah. So obviously, like Italy was like led by Mussolini at the time, and Hitler really respected the history of Italy because of like the Roman Empire. You know, he respected basically anyone that he considered almost like a giant sort of power. So that's one of the reasons he really respected the British, not just because he saw us as like Aryans, but also because obviously the British Empire was like massive. He also really respected like Italy and the whole history of the Roman Empire and stuff like that. So he very much wanted to sort of like, you know, be on side with sort of Mussolini and stuff like that. But it also says, you know, interestingly, during World War I, both Japan and Italy were at war with Germany in World War I, but then switched. And obviously at the beginning of the Second World War, both Italy and Japan were on the same side as Germany. And I don't know the intricacies of this, but it says a lot of it can be blamed on the Treaty of Versailles, which is quite interesting. So people can look into that more if they want. But yeah, interesting stuff. Anyway, man, interesting stuff.
I am, son.
Because Spain weren't actually on either side either, but they were known as sympathizers. Was it Franco?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were definitely like unofficially on the Nazi side.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty much almost like widely known nowadays that they, at the end of the Second World War, when the Germans started losing, some of like the high up Nazi officers basically like fled secretly like through Europe, almost like in a straight line, like through Germany and then to the borders to the west coast of Spain. And then the Spanish basically had Nazi U-boats docked there, and then the Nazi officials, so that they wouldn't ever have to face like be be like held accountable for their war crimes, you know, like like horrendous things, you know, like gassing Jew children to death and stuff like that, and like killing like Slavic children and stuff and women and all sorts of people. They would let them on the U-boats, and then they would go on the U-boats under the Atlantic Ocean to like South America, and then there are like weird little towns and villages in like Argentina where like randomly the people there would just be this little town and nobody freaking speaks Spanish there like the rest of Argentina. They all speak freaking German. None of them have that like Latino Spanish blood like most people in South America. They are just like white and they speak freaking German. And they have like weird little German towns in Argentina. And like they even openly say like they have like pictures of like their grandfathers and great grandfathers wearing like freaking Nazi SS uniforms and stuff. And
It's
like
crazy, man.
And some of them even have like been brought up to like still follow the Nazi ideology. So there's like random towns in the middle of Argentina where they're essentially like Nazis. But they're so isolated and they keep themselves to themselves. And I guess they were brought up like don't like try and obviously spread this or like advertise this. But you can like go there and the people will be open about it. They were like, yes, this is a picture of like. I remember I watched that Finding Hitler program. It was really interesting. And Tim Kennedy, the main guy that was doing the show, he was like in this like little frickin' town in the middle of Argentina, and there was like a guy, and he showed him a picture of his like grandfather or great grandfather, whatever it was. And it was just like this black and white photo of his like father, who was like a top like Nazi SS general, and like in black and white picture, just like shaking hands with Hitler. And it's like, what? That's freaking crazy, man. Yeah,
it was really high up people that were escaping as well, wasn't it? Like
like a lot of high up people. Yeah. It's
crazy.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, a lot of people there is that conspiracy that even like Hitler survived and moved out, and say I'm not sold on it because
isn't the argument that Russia have the body or the skull?
No, they don't have the body.
But they have the skull.
Teeth
but didn't they say that they've done like forensic science on it or whatever to discover, and it was like the teeth or skull or whatever of a 35-year-old woman.
Yeah, I think there was something like that, but then I think I've read also things that are saying like that is rubbish or something, or that was made up. I can't remember the ins and outs. I do know, and this definitely does make sense to me. A lot of people were saying that like because by the time they found the body, I can't remember if it was still on fire or already been put out, but it was like a charred body. So because obviously when it got to the point like Hitler was in his underground bunker in Berlin. And then obviously his officers reporting to him like, yeah, like Hitler, like, you know, the Americans and the British and all the allies are here, have just, you know, in the West now, like stormed the western side of Berlin. The Russians are storming like the east side of Berlin. Like we've basically just got like boys now, like with machine guns who don't know what they're doing, like trying to frickin' like keep these people at bay. It's just a matter of time. So him and his wife, Ava Braun, took cyanide capsules and they committed suicide in the bunker. And then I think he gave orders to like set his bodies on fire or whatever. A lot of people that say that Hitler obviously didn't and that he actually escaped are saying that, like, you know, the Soviets and stuff, you know, that found the body, they didn't know it was Hitler, but they knew that, like, you know, closure in life in general is like so important, whether it's closure at the end of a relationship, whatever it may be. And they were basically saying, like, for the closure of almost like the Western world, it was really important that the people were told that they had found Hitler's body. Yeah. So it was almost like they didn't care if it actually was Hitler's body. They just needed to say that they had. So there's that sort of tale, which I can see obviously a lot of sense in, but then it's just like, you know, actually was it Hitler's or not? As I said, I don't know. We'll talk about it maybe more next week or something, because it is a fascinating subject. You know, like, did Hitler actually escape or not?
I can imagine, like, not having an escape plan, being, like, the head of something like that would be a bit silly. You know,
I guess it's, like, logistic things. Like, would it logistically be possible at that stage? You know what I mean? Like, how the hell, if you're Hitler, would you get out of Berlin by the time that literally your city is surrounded on all sides, you know? Like, it's crazy.
I found it really interesting what I was telling you the other day about the German girl that I was speaking to in Milan. Oh, yeah. And she was saying like the east and west of Germany just still have like there's a lot of like tension there from when it would have been split between West Germany and East Germany, and now it's Berlin like Wall, it's almost like going to two completely different places still because of like how split it would have been back in the day. It makes sense to me. That was really fascinating.
They had like decades and decades of like basically their cultures were like veering off from each other, and then all of a sudden, boom, the Berlin Wall finishes and they're integrated again. But it's hard to undo those decades and decades of. Do you know what I mean? I could imagine almost like the East, without being rude, is almost more of like a grey place. I can imagine, whereas obviously the West would be more like the rest of the West. The West would be more like going to like the Czech Republic or going to France or going to, you know, anywhere else in Europe where like it's a bit more chill, it's a bit more liberal, you know, all of that stuff. And we've come to the end of another Pandora's box, everyone. But I'll say one thing it'd be cool to talk about. Yeah, we'll talk about some interesting World War II facts next week because there's so many interesting things about World War II. We talk about the Battle of Kursk. Ever heard about the Battle of Kursk?
I have not.
It was the largest tank battle in human history.
Nice.
Massive, involved like millions of troops, thousands of tanks. So cool. But yeah, anyway, thanks for joining us, everybody. Have a great week. We love you. See you next time.